Welcome to the campus of NJIT, the New Jersey Institute of Technology, the Jim Wise Theater. I'm Steve Adubato. This is a series we've been doing called Newark at a Crossroads. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce Junius Williams, who is the author of Unfinished Agenda, Urban Politics in the Era of Black Power, and the founder of the Abbott Leadership Institute. Good to have you with us, Junius.
Good to see you.
This is a fascinating book on so many levels. Unfinished Agenda. What is that agenda, and why is it unfinished?
The agenda that was started way back in the 60s with our slogan, Freedom Now, which then morphed into an understanding that to get free, we have to have power. So if we're going to have power within the black community, how do we best achieve that? We then went into a phase where we felt as though we had to run people for elective office, and that's where we are now, kind of 40 years later. I think that agenda is unfinished.
So here's the interesting thing. As I'm looking at the book, I'm thinking, Junius runs for mayor in what year?
1982.
Against Sharp James.
No,
against
Sharp I ran against Ken and
Gibson,
Earl.
And Earl Harris. And then Sharp is later. And so Newark has had an African-American mayor since Ken Gibson in 1970.
That's right.
And Cory Booker leaves, and we have Ras Baraka now. So since Newark has had an African-American mayor since 1970, is that not black power?
It is in one sense that it was never maximized. That's my position that I take. We have the jobs in City Hall. When I say we, I'm talking about black people. The majority of the jobs in the Housing Authority, all the ancillary places, even the Board of Education, because at one point that was all up under the mayor. So Ken was patient, and he got the jobs. Ken Gibson was patient, and so he got to fill all of those jobs, in essence. But is that really all we need? Because, see, when Ken became mayor, when Ken Gibson became mayor, the power was taken away from the city to the suburbs.
Explain that.
Because the money left town, the jobs left town, the people with the money left town, and started running Newark from the state house. So, for example, when Ken came in and there was a big deficit, he had to go to the governor and say, I need some more money.
That's not much different from Ras Baraka as mayor having an approximately $90 to $100 million gap. Whether he likes Governor Christie or not, he has to deal with him because he needs the state help. Is that much different? Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that there are ways in which we could have maximized that power by understanding. First, you got to understand what power is. You got to understand that just because you have some power now, if you don't use the power that you have to go to the next level of power.
What is that level? Because you're talking about jobs. We have the jobs.
Right.
We have the power.
In city government.
But to do what?
We don't have the jobs in the downtown community, for example.
But is it about the jobs?
Well, that's one aspect of power. If you can feed the people, then that's power. But you can't do but so much if all you're going to rely upon is City Hall and the Housing Authority. What about the jobs in Prudential? What about the jobs in the banks? All of those things. So what I say by the next level is understanding that there is that private sector of power, there is that state level of government, there is the federal level. What are you going to do to make sure that you have power to impact upon that? And I point out one of the turning points in Newark political history, and this will never happen again. I point out that Larry Coggins came to me and said,
Larry Coggins was an activist who was an aide to Mayor Ken Gibson.
Well, he worked for me at the time in
Model Cities, and
yes,
you were
he did.
head of Model Cities.
And community development.
That's right.
We had meetings amongst my top staff, and Larry was one of my top people. He came in and said, I tried to tell Ken we ought to run district leaders and take over the county government.
Democratic Party.
Take over the county Democratic Party, which at that time really ran the government because that was before Peter Shapiro and the county executive system.
Right.
But Ken wouldn't do it. We had the mandate from the people, not just from black people, but from white people as well, and Latinos. Latinos weren't that many at that particular time. But in the suburbs such as East Orange, Orange, South Orange, where they were liberal whites, where there were blacks just beginning to move, Ken was seen as the great thing. And if Ken had organized people, he could have become the county administrator at that time, when it was time for that to happen.
You know, it's interesting to me that, Junius, I've known you, obviously, as a kid growing up, with my dad being very involved in government and politics and social life in the state. Growing up, I always knew who you were, and you're always doing important things. And so as I listen to you, I'm thinking to myself, power to what end? Is it to take control of, if you're in control of City Hall, if you're in control of the jobs in City Hall, in control of the Housing Authority, in control of the Board of Education, isn't it to some end to have an impact? And if, in fact, those things have not happened, is that not the failure of the black community?
Well, that did happen. And I'm not passing judgment on what happened on that level of job dispensation. Okay. What I'm saying is, as you pointed out, Newark has no money. Newark has always been in that position. Once Ken Gibson, then Sharp James, it's always been a deficit.
Right.
The money is at the state and federal level. How do you get to that point so that people can get the benefit of the tax money they put in?
How do you see that changing?
How do I see it changing now?
Yeah. Is it just the way it is and that's the way it's going to be?
No, I still, one of the mantras that I have throughout my book is that the power in the street must go along with the power in the suites.
Give me an example.
Power in the suite is the mayor. Power in the street is Junius Williams, or somebody like Junius Williams. There has to be a connection between those of us who are organized in the community and those of us who are in city government. At this point, the people are relied upon to make an election happen. So a candidate wins or loses based upon his ability to turn out the vote.
So Ras Baraka wins. He talks about connecting to the people. He talks about not being beholden to the power brokers. But what can he get done if he is not doing business with Chris Christie, if he's not doing business with the county government structure, if he's not doing business with those who hold the purse strings and have power? What impact can he make?
He can hold those people accountable.
Go ahead.
He can hold those people accountable by people showing up at a certain place at the right time, for example, by making sure that when they vote in the county elections and the state elections, because New Jersey is one of those states where somebody's always getting elected every year. Every year we got one of these elections. So if your organization is tight, you can begin to make an impact upon, for example, county government.
Sure.
Somebody should have been ready to say to the county executive right now, what are you doing for us? What have you done for me lately, as Janet Jackson says.
Right. So it's interesting. You have been involved a lot of these, for all these years, and Ras Baraka becomes mayor, and also you write a lot. By the way, it's a fascinating book. It's called Unfinished Business.
Unfinished Agenda.
Excuse me, and it's also Unfinished Business, but Unfinished Agenda, Urban Politics in the Era of Black Power. By the way, plug your publisher.
My publisher is North Atlantic Books, and it's distributed by Random House.
Good stuff. What's interesting is you write in this book about Ras Baraka's father, Amiri Baraka, who was a fascinating person. And by the way, we did one of the last interviews with Mr. Baraka at NJPAC before he passed, and I just was fascinated by that interview. You write about him in here. You write about so many interesting characters. If I could ask you before you get out of here, you came here from Richmond, Virginia. You love this city?
Oh, yeah.
Because?
Because, well, one of the indices that I love it is because I'm still here after almost 50 years.
And you could be a lot of other places.
I could have been a lot of other places. Believe me, my wife will tell you. I love this city because of the people, because of the potential that I found when I got here. And I stayed because, as my title suggests, there's an unfinished agenda in developing the people into to understand personal empowerment. If you are personally empowered, then you can join with somebody else and become organizationally empowered. And if you're organizationally empowered, then you can make change. You can make intelligent change. It won't just be done on an emotional basis. I'm not against emotion. Emotion propelled the civil rights movement, but we had a plan. We had an agenda, and that agenda took place throughout organization. That's what I want to see happen.
And finally, you're optimistic about this city?
I'm optimistic.
Because?
Well, I think we do have new leadership. I think Ras Baraka is going to do a good job. I think there are more people enlightened, and there are people like you and me around to tell the story.
Got to keep talking about it.
Yes.
Listen, the book is Unfinished Agenda, Urban Politics in the Era of Black Power. Junius Williams has not just been writing about this, but living it. And the book is fascinating because it also talks about coming of age in the 1960s when he came here, the Newark Rebellion, which some of us, when I was a kid, it was called the Riots. It was an extraordinary 5-day period in 1967 in this city. The Gibson years, running for mayor in 1982, powerful stuff against Ken Gibson. And also the Abbott Leadership Institute, which is a great organization, a great team that Junius leads up. Do yourself a favor, get this book, read it. Junius, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate you having me.
Be back right after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been provided by New Jersey Institute of Technology, Prudential Financial's Global Communications Department, Audible.com, Barnabas Health, TD Bank, Josh S. Weston, and by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. This program has been made possible in part by the Fidelco Group.